Welcome back to the Whisky Exchange YouTube channel. My name is Jason Vaswani. I'm the head buyer of Old and Rare Spirits, and welcome to this final segment in this collecting whiskey video series. So this final video, we're going to talk about storage conditions. Now you've started your whiskey collection. How do you keep your collection safe? How do you store it to make sure that it lasts a lifetime? And also, how do you go about, just the day-to-day maintenance of it? You've started your whiskey collection, maybe picked up a couple bottles. Even if you've got, say, a few bottles, that's still a collection because it's not just one. You've started building that collection, and now you're starting to develop your palate, whether you're going out tasting or even got bottles open at home to share and to try. So one of the things we do get asked a lot is, how do I store my collection in order to make sure it's maintained for a long time? Now, whiskey can last a very, very long time if it's stored in the perfect conditions. We find some whiskeys, even in my area of the industry, where we find old and rare whiskeys that are from over 100 years ago, which are still drinkable. And it's just because they were stored very well. So even with your whiskeys today, you can do a similar thing. When it comes to storing your whiskey, I would say always keep your whiskey standing upright, a bit like this to my side. It's very different to storing wine, because wine, you keep it on its side. Whiskey, you keep it upright. With wine, you keep it in a cooler condition. Some people keep it in wine cellars or in fridges. With whiskey, I'd say don't keep it necessarily in a fridge, but just do keep it in a cooler climate so it doesn't react. Because again, with whiskey, you don't want it to sort of heat up. It's one of the reasons why when it's hot outside, you also don't drink whiskey necessarily. So keep your whiskey stored in a cool place and also keep it out of direct sunlight. I would say try to keep it in a bit of shade. If you've got a cupboard, keep it in a cupboard, because you don't want that liquid, basically the sun, giving that sunburn to the liquid. It will change it and alter it. Now, another thing we do get asked quite a bit is, once I've opened my whiskey, how do I store it and maintain it? Because a sealed bottle can last a very, very long time. You're looking at potentially, 20, 40, 50 plus years. And if it's kept very well, you could look at maybe even 100 plus years. I would recommend, though, if you are storing a bottle that you're never going to open, do put parafilm around the top just to keep it safe, and that prevents any sort of oxidization of the liquid escaping even through the cork and the capsule. But going back into now, talking about if you've got an open bottle, how do you store these open bottles? Again, you do a similar thing. Don't store it on its side. You keep it upright, so that way the liquid doesn't interact with the cork. And also try to make sure that the whiskey is not getting too much oxidization, so you're not leaving the bottle open. A big mistake we see when we're sort of drinking, and especially when I go out with friends and we're going to each other's houses, is someone will open a bottle and leave it open on the table. Now, this has two benefits, well, a benefit and a con from it. The one side is that whiskey is going to start oxidizing the minute the oxygen goes inside and reacts with the liquid, so it can change the whiskey. The other plus side of this, though, is that if you've got a whiskey that feels rather closed, and a thing that I don't see many people talk about, which is called bottle shock when you get new bottlings, is sometimes that liquid hasn't had time to mellow and the flavors haven't had time to sort of marry together. So some whiskeys, they need that little bit of time to open up and breathe. I know with old and rare whiskeys, there are many that we've bought and tried, and they just need maybe, whether it's a few days, a few weeks, a few months. We've had one bottle of a very vintage Springbank. It needed 4 years to go from being very closed and oily to just opening up a little bit more. And sometimes those are one of those things, those vintage products. But with your regular everyday whiskeys, if you do keep them open, it will oxidize it. And if you close it, it just prevents that oxidization process from happening. So you've got a pro and a con from when you keep a bottle open. But that's one of the main things when it comes to storing your whiskeys. Please don't keep them in the sunlight, because you want to preserve them as long as you can. Try and keep them in a cupboard or keep them on a shelf. Or, sometimes what some people do is you have cardboard boxes where you buy lots of whiskeys. You just put them in the cardboard box with the dividers, so that way they don't cling together. And it keeps them, again, away from the sunlight, away from the heat, because they're down, and it maintains your collection. And then if you do live in an area where you do experience earthquakes, I'm going to give you a big tip. Do try, if you do have a shelf where you're displaying your whiskey collection, try and put a little rail in front of it, or even you can use a bit of rope, or even some people use fishing line. And it just, because if there is an earthquake or any movement, even if, for example, you live in an area where it's a little bit of tremors, a bit of shakes, the collection just goes, hits against the rail and comes back in. Because sometimes you do find, and I saw that last year, one of our collectors, his whole collection fell on the floor because they had an earthquake and the cupboards went forward. And I think you might see it as well in some of the videos online with people's collections of even whiskey or wine. So I would suggest, if you do collect, you have a nice whiskey collection, and you're in an area that could potentially get an earthquake or mild tremors, do put a little rail in front and try to use rope necessarily, not necessarily a metal rod. It just keeps it all in place. But those are a few tips on how to collect whiskey and how to store it well. And I hope you enjoy this mini series. I've had a lot of fun talking through. I could probably talk a lot more. I've been told to stay quite limited to it. But if you've got anything that you'd like us here at the Whisky Exchange to cover here on the YouTube channel, please do let us know in the comment section down below. And we look forward to hopefully bringing some more series to you in the future. Again, if anything you want to learn, please leave it in the comment section. We're glad to share it in the future. And I look forward to welcoming you maybe to some of our events, maybe even at a whiskey show or one of my masterclasses in the near future. I've been Jason, this is the Whisky Exchange, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Slàinte.